Good evening. This December, 2 months from now, President Ronald Reagan is scheduled to deploy hundreds of missiles around various places in Europe. That will mean that Soviet cities and military targets are within 6 to 10 minutes of nuclear destruction from those missile bases in Europe. Now, I know that many people feel that, in fact, more arms is in some ways the answer for peace, that we have to match Russian might with American might. I know a lot of other people feel like this arms race is an endless spiral, with more and more money going into that nuclear arms race, with special interest groups that are very powerful and tremendous amounts of capital fueling that whole arms race, and people can't do anything about that. I also know that there are a lot of people who now feel very passionately that these missiles, now called Euromissiles, which are scheduled for deployment in Europe in December, are going to be a major step back away from peace, a major step towards a greater likelihood of a nuclear disaster. There'll be 3 people here in our studios tonight who feel that people can make a difference. Those people will be Jan Williams, Kathy Perez, and David Meyer. But first, before we meet those people, we have a tape which has been produced by Andrea West, who is an independent producer in the Boston area who is concerned about issues of nuclear disarmament. Let's find out more now about the Euromissiles.
It's just a question of time that there's going to be a mistake made. One of these things are going to go off.
I'm afraid that someday, if there is a nuclear war, we won't be able to hide or get away from it at all, and it'll just destroy the world.
And I think it's a very frightening thing.
Beginning in December, the United States government plans to install 572 Pershing II and cruise missiles carrying nuclear warheads in several European countries. According to U.S. government officials, the installation of these missiles is necessary for the modernization of NATO forces. However, nuclear disarmament groups view this move as extremely destabilizing and one which could jeopardize the nuclear freeze and move the United States closer to a nuclear war. We asked Dean Hudson, a member of the New England Campaign to Stop the Euromissiles, to describe the Pershing II and cruise missiles.
Well, the Pershing II is a land-based missile similar to the land-based missiles that both the U.S. and the Soviet Union have stationed on their own territory. It travels very quickly, about 6,000 miles an hour. And being based in West Germany, it'll be able to reach deep within Soviet territory in only 6 to 10 minutes, as compared with the 30 minutes that it now takes missiles based on U.S. territory to reach the Soviet Union. The cruise missile flies much slower, but it has the advantage of being able to fly very low to the ground, avoiding Soviet radar detection, and possibly arriving at its target undetected. So the cruise missile, both missiles have a surprise aspect to them, the Pershing because of its speed and the cruise because of its undetectability once it's launched.
Where are these missiles going to be based in Europe?
There's 5 NATO countries who are supposed to receive these missiles. West Germany will be the only recipient of the Pershing II missiles. Crews are scheduled for deployment in Great Britain, Western Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Italy. However, up to this point, both Belgium and the Netherlands have delayed a decision as to whether or not they will actually accept the missiles. So it's not clear whether or not they'll eventually accept them once the deployment schedule is set.
How much is this going to cost the American taxpayer?
Well, both missile systems together at this point are expected to cost about $5.5 billion. We all know, though, that weapon systems have a tendency to rise in cost as a result of cost overruns and general inflation, but it's a fairly substantial amount of money.
Why are people in the nuclear disarmament movements in this country concerned about these missiles going to Europe?
Well, I think these missiles illustrate a very important change as occurring both in terms of nuclear weapon technology and change in a way in which our military and political leaders think about nuclear war. There's a shift in thinking away from deterrence, as we have traditionally understood it, and towards a more aggressive policy that contemplates fighting and winning a nuclear war, a war-fighting strategy. And I think that this shift in strategic doctrine, coupled with the deployment of these weapons that have these important technological capabilities, is extremely dangerous and unstabilizing, will greatly increase the prospects of war.
What's the effect going to be on the freeze?
Once these weapons are deployed, I think the chances of negotiating a freeze will be very substantially diminished. There are a couple of reasons for this. The cruise missile is very small. It's only about 20 feet long and can easily be hidden. This presents a very serious problem for verification. And we all know that any kind of arms control agreement, whether it's a freeze or any other agreement, is dependent on some kind of mutually agreed upon method of counting and tracking weapons. And the cruise will present a problem in this area. But I think there's another reason why it's going to make it very difficult to negotiate a freeze. Right now, there's a basic parity between the U.S. and the Soviet Union that makes it a good time to negotiate a freeze. But once the Euro missiles are deployed, we're going to have first strike weapons stationed right on the borders of the Soviet Union, while the Soviet Union has no similar weapons based in Western Europe. It's sort of a disruption of the basic equality that now exists. The Soviets are going to be a lot less likely to consider a freeze if they feel they're going to be frozen into a position of inferiority. More than likely, they'll respond with some kind of arms buildup of their own.
At Boston City Hall Plaza, John Jaffe asked,
What do you think about the deployment of the cruise missiles that's scheduled to occur this coming fall in Europe?
I think it'd be best for the country to hold off deployment of the cruise missiles and to work on other economic means to achieve peace with the Russians, along with other Western European nations, and that we should reactivate the spirit of détente that was present in the early 70s. It seems that the deployment of these missiles really isn't necessary given the amount of weapons we already have, and that they won't serve any purpose, and that other means of achieving peace through strength could be through economic means or other means such as that.
And I don't think it should be deployed in Europe or anywhere. Why can't we be friends? Talk it out.
I think it would be a great advantage for us to be friends with Russia, because then the world could develop faster and in a peaceful manner.
Yeah. During the summer, the Women's Encampment for a Future of Peace and Justice was formed in Seneca Falls, New York, near the site of the Seneca Army Depot. Suzanne Sawinski read the Peace Encampment statement at the depot gate on July 4th.
We have gathered as women at the Seneca Army Depot to challenge the nuclear threat represented by the weapons stored here. We have come to stop their deployment. As first strike weapons, they lead us one step closer to planetary annihilation by making nuclear confrontation and intervention more likely and by rendering a freeze impossible. As we speak today, our voices express the hopes and fears of women throughout the world.
On August 1st, 2,000 women, representing many different countries, demonstrated at Seneca Falls to protest the deployment of the missiles. During October, events have been planned by the New England Campaign to stop the Euromissiles. We talked about the organization with Tony Palumba and Jenny Russell.
The New England Campaign to stop the Euromissiles grew out of a national effort. Roughly 9 months ago, some of the major disarmament groups in the area, in the country, came together to form a working group. And the working group intention was to build a public protest against the deployment of the Euromissiles. The working group began by asking local campaigns to develop educational material and to put on small Euromissile conferences, many of which took place between March and April of this year. Many campaigns grew out of the support of the national working group, and the New England campaign to stop the Euromissiles is a result of many of the New England-wide organizations and Boston-based organizations coming together for the purposes of building building activities around October 21st through 24th.
What is October 21st to 24th? Jenny?
That's a time that has been targeted internationally and nationally as a time to bring focus to the Euromissiles, to publicly make it known that we want to stop the deployment, which is scheduled for December, and to bring international solidarity to the issue.
What kind of events have been planned in the area?
In the New England area, we have a 3-day schedule between October 21st through 24th. We have identified the 21st, which is a Friday, as a legislative day, to do as much legislative action as possible, to let it be known to our political leaders that we do not want deployment. Then on the 23rd, we are planning a rally on Boston Common. It will begin with a march, which will walk from Senate Park, I believe. Senate Park in Cambridge, through Draper Lab, and then we'll end up at Boston Common, where we plan to have quite a few speakers and performers. That'll happen on the afternoon starting at 1 o'clock. Some of those speakers and performers, it's quite exciting because we have a number of different people, include Holly Neer and Paul Winter, John Hall. Speakers will include Randy Keeler, who's a representative from the Freeze, Barry Commoner, Nino Posti, who's a retired NATO general, who will be speaking.
Are there any other events that are being planned for that week?
The final event for the week would take place on Monday, October 24th, and this is a nonviolent civil disobedience at the AVCO plant in Wilmington. AVCO has contracts with for both the Pershing and the cruise missiles, and that activity is scheduled to take place early on Monday morning. The final details have yet to be worked out, but it is a nonviolent civil disobedience action.
If people want more information about these events or want to know how they can get involved in the nuclear disarmament movement, who can they contact?
Well, for the New England campaign to stop the Euromissiles, they should contact 492-6446 or write to the New England campaign to stop the Euromissiles at 2161 Mass Avenue, Cambridge, 02140. The campaign is a coalition. And there are a number of major organizations involved in its effort. They meet on a regular basis for general meetings every 2 Thursdays, and everybody is welcome to attend those meetings. In addition, the campaign, given the amount of work that's necessary to make the weekend a success, has divided into various task forces. And so people who have skills in media or who are particularly interested in developing the Friday Legislative Lobbying Day, outreach efforts and educational efforts, we are divided into various task forces, and people can focus their energies on helping the campaign by picking a particular piece of its work.
I know that there are probably some people who are watching this program who are thinking that they would like to get involved, but just haven't made the decision to do it. Maybe you can share how each of you got involved in nuclear disarmament work.
Well, I can certainly sympathize with those people who haven't made the decision. I know that it's easy to say, I know the nuclear weapons exist, but I really can't do anything about them. I felt that way for a long time. It's easy to say, no, I can't do anything, and it's easy to avoid the issue totally, but that really will not change the issue. As a matter of fact, that will increase the probability of a nuclear war happening. I think we must get involved. We have to get involved because we do make a difference. That's why we are fighting for the delay of the deployment of these Euromissiles. We have to use our democratic system and process. That's what we're fighting for America. For me, it was really a question of being able to preserve those things that I care for, being able to make a priority out of the life that I so adore, and to be able to appreciate an ongoing civilization without believing that destruction is going to happen through nuclear war.
Tony?
It's difficult to answer the question of how I got involved. I've been doing this work for close to 5 years, and the reality of it was that I became interested in the issue of nuclearism, both nuclear power and nuclear weapons, and I needed to find an organization that helped me develop that understanding. And it was through the Mobilization for Survival that I found that. But I think that I did it like most people do it, and that it wasn't extremely dramatic. It simply was that I decided that it was time to learn more. I wasn't ready to sort of take any major actions. I just wanted to learn more, and I did that by attending a meeting, finding an organization who had a meeting and attended a meeting, beginning to read some literature. What it does take is just sort of charting out a little time in your life to start to read and to think a little bit about the issues and to become to feel comfortable with the information.
How did you get involved in the nuclear disarmament movement?
I actually became involved with disarmament work when I was still a teenager in the early 70s. But I went through a long period of time where I think I lapsed into depression and despair. Felt like I was alone and felt like pretty helpless in being able to change anything. And it really wasn't until last year when people in the Boston area began organizing for the demonstration at the UN that was held on June 12th that drew out 750,000 people that I linked up with other people who were involved, and I found out that I wasn't alone in the way I felt. And not only were there other people out there who felt the way I did and shared my concerns, but they were active, involved in trying to do something. And it's been a tremendous feeling to feel like now I'm part of that and I'm contributing my share as well.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
She's just going to cue me and then I'll... Hi, we're back live now in the Davis Square studios, and I'd like to introduce the guest who is sitting here with me now. Her name is Jan Williams. Hi, Jan. Hi. Jan is a Somerville resident, is involved with a number of nuclear disarmament groups, among them Mobilization for Survival, Jobs with Peace, where she's on the board of directors, and the New England Campaign to Stop Euromissiles. Welcome to the show, Jan.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let me just say to people watching, as Jan and I are talking, that I would urge you to give us a call with your thoughts about Euromissiles, your thoughts about nuclear weapons. The number here is 628-6750. Well, we just saw that interesting tape by Andrea West. I'm wondering, you said while we were talking just before that you had a couple of comments and thoughts about that?
Well, I would like to start by pointing out that a good deal of the time that the interview in the tape was going on, there was a poster in the background that said 5 months to go. And the poster now says 2 months to go. And I think time has passed since then, and we're sitting here at the end of October talking about a deployment which is being opposed in much of the Northern Hemisphere that's supposed to happen in December. So I think we are talking about a very timely event.
Let me ask a simplistic question. If most of the Northern Hemisphere is opposed to this, why is this happening?
Well, there was a plan a few years ago when the Carter administration was in office to go ahead with these missiles that have a first strike capability that I think was described real well on the tape. And that was supposed to be part of a two-pronged plan where by planning the deployment, we, the United States, would be concurrently pressuring the Russians to negotiate. Now, negotiations have been stalled. They have never really made any progress, and we have noted recently in the past few weeks the Russians have made some overtures to sit down and talk, and mentioned taking out some of their missiles in Eastern Europe as a bargaining point to start with. So when we're talking about who is opposed or where it came from, it came from the Carter administration. It has been a plan in the works for a long time.
Well, you know, one of the things I hear a lot is, well, okay, most of the Northern Hemisphere is opposed, and it's not a good thing, et cetera, but it's happening, and, well, there's not much we can do about it. That the policy and decisions are made on a much higher level. There are all kinds of special interests, very powerful groups behind it. How do you respond to that?
Well, obviously, it makes me feel very sad to hear that people feel that they have no power whatsoever over decisions of this kind, which are life and death issues. And they're not life and death issues for the decision makers any more or any less than they're life and death issues for all of the people involved in Europe, in the United States, in Canada, where the movement has gotten very large. So I think it's very important to have actions spread throughout these countries that give people a sense of having some power. And I think there's definitely power in numbers. We can go ahead with demonstrations in 30 to 40 cities across the US, all over Western Europe and Great Britain and Canada this weekend, and maybe we can feel some power.
Just moving back to a personal level for a second before we talk more about some of the things going on, what got you involved in this?
Well, I've been involved in disarmament-related issues for a long time, starting back in the Vietnam War. And I think it's hard to focus in on immediate things a lot of the time. We haven't seen the kind of buildup that we're seeing in the last 2 or 3 years of the Reagan administration. And I think that's had a notable effect in terms of energizing the disarmament community and making it push forward. And this is one of the most immediate issues that I think we've had to face in quite a while. I think the cruise and the Pershing, our first strike weapons, other first strike weapons like the MX, have caused more activity and more conversation and discussion.
Another thing that in the face of all the focus of attention on the nuclear disarmament movement, as there's been more buildup with the Reagan administration, has been the recent the downing of this Korean jetliner, which a lot of people feel like, oh my God, that's taken the wind out of the sails of the nuclear freeze movement. And a lot of people have made the connection of, well, how can we trust the Russians? Look at what happened. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it has been an issue that we need to deal with and talk about and think about. It has been very frightening and sad for all of the people involved on the airliner and the rest of us who want to see a world where there aren't any hair trigger responses in general, where there isn't really a Cold War mentality. And I think that's what contributed to the downing of the Korean airliner. I think the victims on that jet were the victims of the Cold War and the kinds of tensions that are existing right now between East and West. And I think deployment of new weapons, building of new weapons, research into them, all heighten the tensions. We can't keep going like that and expect to not have more situations of this type happening. And the next one could be worse. It could be an atomic weapon that could go off because people are reacting quickly without thinking and checking out what is happening in the world at that particular time and place and moment.
Okay, let's take a phone call. Let's see if there is a phone call. You're on the air. This is Dead Air Live. Did you have a comment or question for us?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, who's this?
This is Pamela Cruz.
Oh, what's happening? Let me call you right back on the phone.
Okay, fine.
That was a phone call, but not one for Dead Air Live. Sorry. Apologies to our audience. Maybe we can get back to one of the things we've begun to think about was what's going to happen now in terms of the nuclear disarmament movement, and specifically the movement to try and stop the deployment of Euromissiles. On the level of legislative action, what's going on?
Well, the legislative scene right now is vital to stopping the immediate deployment of the missiles. There have been various bills to try to delay the deployment before the House and the Senate. And the one that seems to have the most chance of going through right now is a 6-month delay. Now that's being proposed by someone named Sabo, who's a Democrat from Minnesota. This is a very important thing for people to think about because most Massachusetts legislators have not really taken a stand on the cruise and the Pershing deployment. And this is their chance to do so. Many of them have supported the freeze, the nuclear weapons freeze. This issue, which relates directly to whether or not we can or can't ever have a freeze, is going to be coming up probably in the end of October, the beginning of November in Congress for a vote. And it's very important for people to let their legislators know how they feel about it. Tip O'Neill, who is the local representative, has obvious power to control what issues reach the House floor, which ones don't, and he hasn't said anything about this bill. So I think we need for him to take a stand on it. He's supported the freeze. Why is he allowing the cruise and the Pershing to go through?
Okay. Let me just for a second, we have another phone call, which we'll see if it's actually here. Hello, you're on Dead Air Live. Did you have a comment or question for us?
Yes, I don't know if she could help, but I was wondering, when was our last air raid, and if there are any more, since the nuclear weapons are getting more and more?
When was our last what?
Air raid.
Air raid.
In 1965 was the last air raid we had when, if there was a disaster of any kind, they give us an air raid and we go to fallout shelter.
Right.
Over in Russia, they have buildings, they spend most of their money building stuff that where there's a nuclear disaster, the people go and they have air raids twice a year to see how many people will survive or if there can be any survival, which I don't think there would be. But where there are so many plants today with nuclear waste and things like that, should have air raids.
You're saying that you think we should have air raids?
Definitely.
Any reactions to that?
It sounds like she's concerned that we have a civil defense plan. Am I right?
Exactly.
Well, civil defense...
Now, they're spending all this money on weapons and stuff, let's think of the people involved, not just the government and the politicians and the money.
In other words, you feel like no one is really taking care of your personal needs.
Whatever,
And you want to be a survivor if there's ever something.
Well, yeah, I don't think there will be any survivors to the war. But I mean, with all these plants that have, there could be a warning of some type for the people.
I know there's a lot of controversy about the fact that any energy should be put into plans for civil defense because that begins to acknowledge that maybe we can survive the war and begins to get people to think in the wrong way. So some people would feel that we shouldn't have anything like that. We should put, that's not to say we shouldn't be concerned with people, but we should put our energy into stopping the likelihood of nuclear war.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay, thank you for calling in.
Okay, bye-bye.
We don't have a lot more time. I know we talked a little about legislative action. On the local level, people want to get involved. One thing is obviously getting in touch with your congressman. You mentioned Tip O'Neill. What else can people do specifically around the campaign against Euromissiles?
Well, there are a lot of exciting things that people can do over the next week, and some of that information was covered in the tape. I don't want to repeat it. The march and rally coming up this Sunday should be very exciting. Among the speakers that we have planning to attend, we heard just last Friday that Jesse Jackson was going to come to Boston. This really puts Boston on the map as part of the international scene of people protesting the Euromissiles. I think we have a great lineup of speakers, including Barry Commoner, who ran for president in the last presidential election, Grace Paley, who's a feminist writer and poet and a very good speaker, Randy Keeler from the Freeze. I don't want to leave anyone out, but I know it's a long list. I don't want to bore people.
People want to get involved, want to go to it. Where do they go? When?
Okay. There are two gathering points. Sunday morning, that's Sunday, October 23rd. If you are interested in participating in the march, you should gather at 10:30 in the morning at Senate Park, which is in Cambridge at the corner of Prospect and Broadway. And the march will begin there, and it will go past Draper Lab, where where there will be a small action, including some symbolic activities, taking bread from missiles, distributing the bread through the crowd, things like that. Then on into Boston, past Government Center, and down to the Boston Common. The rally will take place there. It will start at 1 o'clock and go on for most of the afternoon.
Okay, there's much more to be said, and we're also running out of time. So I wanted to thank you, Jan, for coming on the show and being with us. And for people watching, coming up is the next part of our show will be a talk with Kathleen Perez, who is a Master of Divinity student and involved with a lot of different aspects of the peace movement. Now, before that, we have a videotape called Let's Go Defense. It's a powerful, enjoyable tape. So don't go away. We'll be back live soon. Hi, we're back live, and the tape you just saw was a performance by a group called Boston Flats. Again, let me remind people that we do want to hear from you, and our number here is 628-6750. What you think about the Euromissiles, whether they should be deployed in Europe, what you think about nuclear warfare. Give us a call. I'd like to now introduce our second guest, who's now here in the studio with me, and her name is Kathleen Perez. Hi.
Hi.
And Kathy is a resident of Somerville. She is a second-year Master of Divinity student at the Weston School of Theology, and is also a Catholic laywoman worker in St. Anne's Parish here in Somerville. Maybe as a way to start, Kathy, if you could say a little bit about what got you involved, concerned about, and then involved with putting some efforts towards being against nuclear warfare.
Okay, sure. I think that my own personal experience is unique in one sense, but in another sense it's very much like most of us who are involved at AVCO in Wilmington. I primarily got involved because of my religious commitment. As a Catholic, and as a Catholic who takes her Catholicism seriously, I felt it was important to make a stand on some very tough political issues. Just an aside, when I was living in my hometown of Northampton, Massachusetts, I would see a group of families get together in the local park, and they would hold a banner that said "Disarm," and they would stand there for about 45 minutes, and they did this week after week after week. And after a while I started saying to myself, that makes a difference. And if that makes a difference to me, it's a small difference, but it's enough of a difference, and maybe I can do that with someone else. And then I heard about the AVCO Peace Witness in Wilmington, and heard that it was a religiously based witness, in the sense that most people are coming from a religious commitment or feel a strong sense of making a personal testimony.
Can I cut in? What, sure. For people who don't know, what's AVCO?
Okay. AVCO is the plant in Wilmington, Massachusetts. It's on Lowell Street, Route 129 in Wilmington. It's building the nose cones for the cruise missiles and the electronics for the Pershing II missiles, both of which are going to be deployed in December.
Okay.
Without AVCO's involvement in this particular part of building the cruise and Pershing missiles, they would not be able to be deployed to Europe. So they are participating in a substantial way in promoting the Euromissiles.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, from what you said, the way I introduced you, I know that religion is very important to you. What's the connection between the importance that religion plays in your life and you're taking a stand about nuclear disarmament?
Well, I think for a long time, people have been taking their religion at a personal level and a very privatized level. But I think that the bishop's statement on the nuclear arms race, for example, that's just come out, the bishop's pastoral, is one example of faith seeking justice in the world. And it's really taking off on what Vatican II was talking about in Lumen Gentium and much of the other pastorals that came out of that College of Cardinals, was primarily that Catholics, Christians, that all people who claim they have faith need to show that faith in very concrete ways, seeking social justice. And if we're going to take that seriously, we need to act in some direction, in whatever small ways are given to us in our daily lives. We need to act on that.
I know that there have been some incidents of civil disobedience at AVCO, as I understand it, which actually involved some destruction of property there, and I'm not sure what the details of that were. I guess I'm leading up to what happened, and how do you mesh that with, I don't know what your position on that is, but how do you mesh that with the religious beliefs and sense of social justice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what happened first?
Well, I think that we need to put it in a context. I mean, I think that when you say destruction of property, that can get to be a very emotional kind of thing when all you can see is someone destroying property and nobody knows why. First of all, we didn't destroy any property. What happened was August 9th, this past summer, fell on a Tuesday. And that particular day we decided to do a memorial service for the victims of Nagasaki. And the way our witness has been going thus far, we've been standing on the periphery of the plant at the entrances, holding signs silently for an hour, in prayer or in meditation or just standing silently, and by our presence, hopefully, asking the workers to reconsider what they're doing or just make a check on their conscience. And we're doing that regularly. This Tuesday morning, we decided what we wanted to do was to make a personal appeal to the workers by walking into the plant and walking through the parking lot area and depositing some pictures of Nagasaki victims on the fence and leaving. We had told the police a week in advance what we were planning to do. We tried to tell the workers beforehand what we were going to do. Whoever would talk to us, we would say what we were going to do. It was an experiment in openness. There were only 7 of us planning to do it, and what we were trying to do was to and I think that we have succeeded. We succeeded in our objective of making our feelings known. I think you might be referring to the AVCO Plowshares action.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was on July 14th. 2 of the members of AVCO Plowshares had been coming to the regular Tuesday morning vigils with us, and they had been involved in a long process of prayer and discernment starting in January about AVCO. Many of the group, many in the Plowshares group, at least, well, I know at least 1 or 2, had done the same thing at King of Prussia down in New York. And that, and as a result of their entering that plant, the contract was moved from King of Prussia to AVCO. So they just they're following the contract.
Okay.
Their basic message is that we're going to follow the contracts until there are no more.
We're going to run out of time pretty soon since things go by real quickly. But any kind of last brief thoughts that you might have, you want to leave people with out of your own personal, religious, and social justice kinds of experience?
Well, I'm going to leave people's religious backgrounds and their own religious feelings to themselves. I think that is definitely a private matter that they need to figure out for themselves. But one thing I do want to mention is that on October 24th, AVCO is planning, where AVCO was chosen as the New England site for civil disobedience. Now that's slightly misleading because there are several people who are going to be involved in civil disobedience, but there's also a majority of people who are just going to go there in a peaceful legal support of the others. There's no risk of arrest. You would just come to show your support for the people and what they're doing. There's going to be a lot of singing songs and carrying banners and holding balloons that say "Seek Peace" on them, and in general an upbeat, peaceful morning, trying to show some sign of hope for a despairing situation.
Well, thank you, Kathleen Perez, for being on. And do not go away. We have a short videotape which is part of some of the scenes from the Somerville Speak Out, which took place this past spring. So let's hear what some of you here in Somerville had to say then.
Good afternoon. I am not 9 years old and I don't want to be 10. But I'm perhaps one of the oldest people in here. I'm 73 and I'd like to be 74. I see that the large preponderance of the audience are young. Someday you'll be old. Don't regret it. We don't all have that wish. I had about 15 or 20 pages of oratory written out But after listening to those orators up there, I just left them behind. And I'll read a couple of paragraphs here. My name is Joseph Sadowski. I'm the president of the Somerville Cambridge Elder Services, and I'm here on their behalf. I'm here today to express the support of the Somerville Cambridge Elder Services for the Somerville Speak Out. As a private, non-profit organization serving the needs of the elderly in both communities, we are committed to increasing and improving federal programs serving our elder citizens, not decreasing the benefits. Our most recent concerns include proposals for reduction of both Social Security and Medicare benefits to the nation's elderly. We certainly do not support balancing the country's defense budget at the sacrifice of health care and retirement benefits for men and women who have worked throughout their lives and deserve these supplements to enhance the dignity and independence of older citizens.
Another of our sponsors, Fluffy Bergman from the Mystic Learning Center.
Hello, friends and neighbors from Somerville, and a hello to you from surrounding communities also. My name is Fluffy Bergman, and I'm here today as the director of the Mystic Learning Center, as a concerned citizen of this country, and also as a worried member of this planet and universe. I would like to share with you briefly my individual concerns, worries, and thoughts about what brings us here today. As the director of the Mystic Learning Center, I have many concerns, but the main one is funding for the program. The center, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, offers educational and recreational activities to youth of the Mystic Housing Development through an after-school and evening program in the fall through spring, and also through a special summer program. The center employs Mystic teens as teachers of younger kids. I think I'm not incorrect to say that the program works, and it has been fulfilling many needs of the Mystic community for close to 12 years now. But our federal funds were cut back for the current year, and we face even greater cutbacks in the upcoming fiscal year. Further down the road, the future of the Learning Center is even less certain. What I have to say about this, and I think I can speak here for Mystic residents also, is that the Mystic Learning Center is much more important to us than MX missiles, Trident subs, and nuclear bombs. The Mystic Learning Center is a positive investment in our future and not an investment that will lead to death and destruction. As a concerned citizen and worried member of this planet and universe, I would like to say, I think it's time our government adopted policies and spending practices that would lead to world peace, not annihilation. Some may call me idealistic, and I guess I am, but I think it's more than that. I'm a lover of life and a lover of things in nature. I believe firmly that we need to live in harmony with our environment and the world around us. The arms race, along with its nuclear weapons, is certainly not leading us down this peaceful path. Let me close by saying, come by the Mystic Learning Center table, make a Speak Out mobile with us or a bookmark, complete our Think and Know inventory on the subject war. Let us show you how to write a paragraph so you can add it to our book of paragraphs on war. Play our math peacemaker game. Share with us your thoughts and enjoy the afternoon. Thank you.
My name is Caroline.
Hi, we're back live again, and with me now in the studio is David Myers. David is a Somerville resident. He's an organizer for the Somerville Speak Out, was an organizer for the Somerville Speak Out. Is a member of People Against Annihilation and also involved with the campaign, the New England campaign to stop Euromissiles. So David, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Maybe briefly, we talked a little just before about you're wanting to say something about what got you involved, and then we can get to what are some of the things going on now in Somerville that other people can get involved in.
I think for me it started somewhere back in second grade when we were doing nuclear air raid drills. And a whole class of kids would get lined up against the hall, all crouching down with their bottoms up, waiting to be destroyed. And around 3rd or 4th grade, this stopped because kids stood up and said, look, if we're going to go anyway, we may as well be standing. We may as well be standing. And what's happening in Boston and what's happening all over the world is standing up and saying, no, this is ridiculous. We're not going to take it lying down. We're not going to present our bottoms as a target for nuclear weapons. We're going to fight against it. And that's what's going to happen in Boston on Sunday. That's the first thing to talk about. Now, the people of Somerville have stood up against the nuclear arms race in the past. This April, you've already seen tapes from the Speak Out. This April, following that, Mayor Brune called a hearing to officially reject the crisis relocation plan. Now, this is the mayor of our city. We're being shown responsible leadership in that regard. Yeah. Now, you wanted to ask me about something else?
Well, yeah, I guess the other things in addition to the October 20th that we've talked about, I know that the issue is coming up in the elections this fall about nuclear-free zone in Somerville. Is that it? I wonder if you could say a little about looking ahead. What are the kind of things coming up?
Okay, last November, the voters of Somerville overwhelmingly approved a nuclear freeze. More than 70% of the voters of Somerville said, we want a freeze, bilateral, on the testing, production, and deployment of nuclear weapons. And as you know, that hasn't happened. The voters of Somerville have been denied. Not taking that lying down, they've now proposed that even if we can't influence national policy immediately, we want to control what happens in Somerville. Now, right now, there's no nuclear industry in Somerville, and we want to keep it that way. We want to keep Somerville safe, and we want to keep our city under our control. So, this November, on the ballot, voters of Somerville will have the opportunity to vote for a nuclear-free zone, for keeping Somerville free of the testing and the production of nuclear weapons and their component parts.
Okay. The one other thing I know you mentioned to me before was about a pamphlet that, as you know, it's the way as the floor director, about a pamphlet that was looking for hopefully getting some funding to be distributed in the city.
At the mayor's hearing, Mayor Brune asked for a pamphlet to be produced, to be distributed to every house in Somerville, detailing Somerville's role in the nuclear arms race and what Somerville can do to sort of start the race toward disarmament. And a committee of Somerville citizens wrote that pamphlet. And it's similar to other pamphlets from cities like Cambridge and Arlington, but it's also different in the fact that we're the first city that's addressed the issue of economics. Even if a bomb is never dropped in Somerville, we're suffering right now from the arms race. We're losing jobs happening every day right before our eyes. Okay? This is something that we are concentrating on. And we're looking for funding to distribute this booklet throughout the city. And Mayor Brune has already contributed from his campaign fund to this effort, but there's still a long way to go. And unfortunately, people who build these weapons don't have any problems raising money at all. They raise money from us. And it takes an extra commitment to put money into the projects that you want to fund. And this means digging down a little bit deeper. Now, it's not going to cost too much to distribute this pamphlet if we all help. And you can contribute money to the pamphlet by sending a check to the Somerville Peace Education Project in care of St. Clement's Church or in care of the Community Presbyterian Church on College Avenue.
Okay. Great. Time has evaporated, believe it or not. But I'm also glad that you brought up the whole trade-off in terms of economics and money that's going into nuclear weapons, not going into other areas. So I want to thank you, David Myers.
Trident missile?
What? Last thought, quick, 10 seconds.
One Trident missile costs more than the city of Somerville spends on education in 33 years.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Okay, David, thank you very much. And if you can just hang on for 1 second as we just end the show. For those of you watching, please tell other people about these issues. Tell other people that they can make a difference. And I think that's the strongest message of this show tonight about stopping this nuclear arms buildup. This show will be rebroadcast this coming Friday. That's October 21st at 7 p.m. And a week from tonight, October 25th at 9 p.m., both of those on this same Channel 3. Let me give credit to the Somerville Producers Group. I'm the most visible member of that group right now because I'm right out here in front of the camera. My name's John Jaffe as the host. There are a lot of other people responsible for this show. Among them, the producers, Linda Rubin, Sandra Stevens, Cheryl Kamar, director of this show, Larry Yeager, switcher, Cheryl Kamar, audio, Paul Clover, tapes, Paul Serapis, camera, Marsha Green and Nancy Smith, floor manager, Linda Rubin, lighting, Nancy Smith, Larry Yeager, and Cheryl Kamar. That's who we are as a producers group. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And as a way of closing, here's another theater piece that came from Hiroshima Day.
You saw nothing in Hiroshima. Nothing.
Saw everything in Hiroshima. Everything.
You saw nothing in Hiroshima. Nothing.
When my father told me the facts of life, he left out two: homosexuality and Hiroshima. If he had tried to include them, and he swears that he did, he would have switched them on the end of his tongue, their value disguised as his smile. He would have put one on top of the other, pounded them flat, pounded them flush. Then entered something irrelevant in his journal. Then entered my mother, shutting me out. As I hunch over in the hall, against their door, I tell myself, Hiroshima never existed before the explosion, doesn't exist after it. I whisper, Hiroshima is the explosion itself. On that 6th day of August,
The hospital had a bomb in it. We went in there wearing every dead thing we'd ever seen or smelled. She knew our son was dead inside her even before the test could wrap around us and tighten. The hospital had Hiroshima in it, coating the walls like fine dust, covering the floor with shine. We signed our names with instruments meant for adding columns of numbers. The elevators were on film. I broke my hand against the car window and drove home unable to see where I'd been. I ate food made of bodies, watched hours slide through walls, slide through my breathing. I broke my fast against whatever it was I had in my hand, afraid for my mouth to stop.
The sight of the soldiers, though, was more dreadful than the dead people floating down the river. I came on to, I don't know how many burned from the hips up, and where their skin had peeled, flesh was wet and mushy. They had no faces. Their eyes and their mouths had been burned away. And it looked as though their ears had melted off. You could tell front from back. One soldier, whose features had been destroyed, asked me for a drink of water. I didn't have any, and he didn't say anything more. His plea for water must have been his last words.
Hiroshima, have I taken you for granted? Should you divorce me because I enjoy the guilt of sleeping with other young atrocities? Hiroshima, you became a whore to become a virgin. You took me by the hand and led me to a bed in the sky. Why must we do this to each other? Why must we do this to each other?